Hi, everybody. I'm Madison Cote here from the Edmonton Screen Industries Office, and I'm here today with some of the best and brightest in game development, esports, everything video game development, and anything you could imagine in games, really. Post secondary panel. So, we're really, really excited because there are so many different entries into the games industry now, and we're going to highlight a few of them here today, as well as make it maybe seem a little less scary, because I know sometimes that barrier to the games industry can seem pretty large, but luckily we have tons of different ways to get into the games industry depending on what your interest is. Plus, we have representatives from all across the province here, so it doesn't matter where you are, we will get you into games and you're going to love it. So I can't wait to introduce everybody here to you today. So let's go ahead and start with Allison.
Sure. Hello. I'm Allison Secor. I'm an instructor in the virtual and augmented reality and multimedia production programs at the Lethbridge College.
Awesome. And how about yourself, Victor?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Victor Lee. I'm the president and co-founder of the Alberta Esports Association. I also work as a remote instructor for Mount Royal University for their esports management program, where I teach the project management course.
Amazing. And how about yourself, John?
Hi, I'm John Winsky. I'm an instructor for DMIT at NAIT in Edmonton. I teach primarily in the game programming stream.
Very interesting. And Sean?
My name is Sean Googlis. I'm a professor at the University of Alberta and co-director of the Computer Game Development Certificate. And I teach courses in understanding video games and how sort of the capstone course for the certificate, where students are just basically let loose and told to go build a game. And I teach that course as well.
Very interesting. And finally, Derek.
Hi, everyone. I'm Derek Mccurdy. I'm the Director for Innovation and Technology at Norquest College. And what that really means is I get to lead a variety of really interesting and cool, innovative and technology-based projects, one of which is our esports program, which we launched last fall.
Very exciting. So as you can see, we do have a really wide variety. So I'm very excited to get into what that kind of looks like and how people can get involved. But I kind of want to know a little bit about how video games influenced your own time in post-secondary and how things are a little bit different these days. Like you said, you can build a video game as a course now, but when we were all in post-secondary, probably a little bit different. So Victor, I can see you smiling. So maybe let's start with you.
Sure. So I am a U of A alumni. I graduated in 2013 for civil engineering, so something completely unrelated to what I'm doing now, although I still practice as a professional engineer and project manager. And at the time, I had started a esports club for Super Smash Brothers, which is still alive and kicking. But certainly, 10 plus years ago, when you tried to make a student group about gaming, there was a lot of hurdles to jump through, but we managed to get into clubs fair. We managed to build our constitution, actually have a flourishing student group that's still, flourishing to this day. And so for games, it's just been in my life this whole time, and certainly with post-secondary, that gave me an opportunity to start building something a little bit more formal. And fast forward till now, and here I am. So it's amazing that we have Sean here from the U of A that's incorporating games in a more meaningful way in terms of game development. And a bit of a fun anecdote here as well. With Corbett Artem, those who might recognize that name, he was one of the teachers that spearheaded the Edmonton Public Schools esports committee that we kicked off their big interscholastic esports event in mid-March. But he actually was the TA for me when I took an after degree at the U of A for education, and I took the one of the education programs that was video games in education, and he was actually my TA for that. So it's kind of full circle. It's a small world.
Oh, yeah. Everybody knows everybody in the video game industry, especially in Edmonton, but also in all of Alberta. I mean, we're all connected through, I think, one degree of separation, it seems like. But yeah, speaking of U of A, like there are so many developers that we've talked to who they started out there in computer science and then they ran into video games head first. We'll be talking a little bit with folks like Trent, as well as Mark Dara. Coming right out of university and right into games was a little bit different back then. But how about yourself, Sean? What did video games look like when you were in post-secondary?
I think that was a little bit longer ago than many of you. There was obviously no program in computer games, and most of my experience was spent playing gold box games in in like Eye of the Beholder and the like. And sorry. And so ultimately, what you get is a professor who has this sort of hidden passion for games and love of games, and then gets hired at a university to teach a new grad program, and suddenly realizes that there's a professor over in computing science who loves games, and there's a professor in creative writing who loves games, and we all sort of put our heads together and kind of came up with some courses led by one of the chair of computing science, Jonathan Schaefer, to create a course, what is now like 15 years ago, in computing science. And that course was so successful that we ended up building a certificate around that course. And so we have courses now in creative writing, in music, in education, in computing science, obviously, in history, and all over the place, that students end up taking sort of that introductory course together in a group of, a computing scientist, a creative writer, a musician, building a course together, or building a game together, and then they build on those skills and ultimately end up at the end of their degree with a certificate. And all of this was done by professors who never took courses in computer games. We all sort of loved them and then decided to build something together here at U of A, which I imagine is similar to many of you.
That's amazing. Yeah, like Allison, I can imagine a lot of people didn't talk about anything like AR, VR, anything like that when you were in post-secondary your go-around. So it probably is kind of surreal that you get to talk about that as an actual course now.
Yeah, it's funny because same thing. I graduated technically in 2015. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of games courses. I graduated from the U of L, and they have a new media program, so it's a mix of everything. Realistically, I was there for the 3 games courses that I got to take. And right around my capstone semester, so at the end of my time there, the Oculus Rift started showing up on message boards, and I convinced my parents that I desperately needed one for school because I knew I could get it out of them if I told them it was for school. So I got that and fiddled with that during my capstone and kind of fell in love with it. Back then, it was super janky. I had to duct tape a infrared camera to the front. There were no controllers. There was no resources online. I come from an arts background, so learning to code that way was incredibly painful. And it's funny how quickly it just sort of exploded. After that, my husband, who I met in the program, he's also a game developer. We decided to make a game with it, released it a couple years later, and through doing promotion with that, Southern Alberta is an even smaller bubble than the provincial industry. I just kind of, I guess, caught wind of these talks at the college of, they were playing with the idea of integrating it into other programs, and just very quickly it sort of built up as, why don't we just do it as a program? It has avenues in gaming, but it also has avenues in training and tourism and stuff like that. So it's fun to be able to take the gaming skills and put it towards, I can make a training simulator one day, a game the next day, and a tourism experience the next day. Yeah, it's still surreal. It's still very fresh.
Yeah, I can imagine. Whereas John, obviously legend. We all know you from your AAA time as well, being with BioWare for so long, and then going on to develop this really intense program at NAIT that has received a lot of attention as well. But I think you kind of had that similar story of, it was computer science back then, and that was about it.
Yeah, like I know that I didn't go to university because I was just like 4 years, I can't do any more school. So I went to NAIT in the early 90s, and yeah, games were, I wanted to make games since I was about 13. But as I got through the courses, right, I just took CST because I was like, anything to do with computers, I'll do something. But as I talked to people, it was really hard to figure out, like, how would I actually get into making games? And it seemed that, you would have to move somewhere, or you try to do QA as for a while, and it just didn't seem like an option. I spent time doing COBOL on the mainframe, and I was like making a Star Wars trivia game because I was like, I want to do something interesting. So that's what I was doing. And yeah, I never thought that I would actually end up creating games until meeting Ray and Greg and Trent and them. And it was so much fun to just sort of, back then you could dive into it and just go, what do we do? I don't know, let's figure it out. And you just start going. And it's a lot harder now because there's a lot more competition, but the students have so many more tools.
Definitely. I think that's one of the things we're seeing already, just you all talking about your backgrounds, is you never know where things will lead you, right? And Derek, what about your background?
Yeah, so kind of a bit of a combination of what others have talked about too, in terms of my experiences with gaming. I'm a child of the 80s, so I was in the bulletin board era and bulletin board systems, and setting up games on those and things was always kind of an early passion for me. And when I went to university, and this was in the Maritimes, I remember when our residents got connectivity for LAN networking and basic services on campus, which of course we immediately used for Doom and Duke Nukem 3D and some of the Command and Conquer, some of those games that were out in the 90s, for fun and recreation, and just for learning too. So it was a really wonderful time to watch that whole era come in and to see where it's come now. Certainly at Norquest, when we looked at esports, we had pockets of students and faculty, and the research office was interested, and lots of areas were interested in, and just seeing how that's already starting to grow and take off throughout the experiment plan that we're doing. It's just so exciting to see the opportunities that have come. And I know as a student back in the 90s, I was always worried about, I'm not strong at math, so there's probably nothing there for me because I'm not a developer. But now when you look at esports, there's so many career opportunities across in so many different avenues for students. It's just tremendous.
Oh, definitely. And those different ways of entry into the ecosystem are the really exciting parts. And when we look at these programs, we've heard a lot about Alberta's program. We're also getting to celebrate some of their successes that we've seen over the year as you all transferred to online and figured out how to make that work. And as we joked a little bit earlier off camera, over the weekend, figured out how to make that work. But there's such unique features to each of these programs that sometimes it's hard to translate that online. But I think after we've seen this over a year now, it's been pretty successful to see the students adapt, the professors adapt, the instructors, and really, really strong. So what we kind of wanted to talk about was the actual programs themselves a little bit, because they are very, very different. Whereas, we have some of the newer ones here joining us with like MRU and Norquest, but really Nate and Alberta have led kind of the Edmonton focus for a long time now. But you were saying it's 15 years now for the program at U of A?
15 years-ish for the first sort of course that would become the backbone for the certificate. We had such a sort of great leadership from Jonathan Schaefer to try and see this through as a sort of idea that would find legs. And it ended up being something that we just couldn't, we just had so many students applying for the very few positions, we had to put on multiple sections of it. And then once we had that problem, we ended up realizing we needed more and more courses for this. And so we tried to create, we very consciously tried to create a certificate process that matched the game development process outside of the university. So we really tried to focus on a program that required students from multiple disciplines to work together. They had to build complete games or complete gaming moments. They had to go through the entire process in every course in the certificate of pitching a game, of going through the the project planning, going through the sort of vertical slice, all the sorts of different stages that would happen in the game industry, they have to do in each of these courses. And as they get more experience in each of the courses going through the years, we basically hold their hands less and less. So by the time they get to the capstone course, it's basically, view us as a resource, but go away and build us a game. And then you have to present every 2 weeks and go through, whatever sort of process we have developed that week as we think is the best way to do this. But yeah, so the certificate's been around now for probably 8 years, I think. But yeah, we've had courses now for 15 years, specifically on games that have led to the creation of the certificate.
Yeah, and so down at Mount Royal, we've seen a little bit more focus on esports management. And what exactly does that even mean, Victor, if you want to tell us a little bit more there?
Yeah, sure. So certainly excited to be teaching esports management at Mount Royal. It's Alberta's first accredited academic program for esports, and certainly, we're really kind of paving the way here. And the way that this course is really branded is when it comes to esports management, it's really looking at the business component of esports. And so this is a continuing education program that you can take to supplement your existing education or to take it following your past program. And so it's a 4-course program that you can do within 3 years in any order, and so long as you complete it, then you're awarded the certificate. And so underneath this program, there are 4 courses. One is just an overview of the industry at large. The second course is communications and marketing within esports. The third is the project management and event management component, which is the course that I teach. And then the last is the logistics and operations of the industry. And so certainly drawing from my role with AESA, as well as my professional background in project management, we really kind of teach in my particular course, starting an actual event from start to finish. So going into the planning, the budgeting, the scheduling, identifying risks, and delivering this project. And so certainly, from a project management side of things, there carries a lot of parallels, but really the context of it being within the esports landscape is what makes it unique. So that's kind of the course in a nutshell. And it's quite interesting. We've had a number of students in the course, for example, take the 4-year sports management program at Mount Royal, and then also at the same time take this esports management course to supplement their degree with the intention of entering the esports industry, working as an events manager. So it's certainly quite exciting. It's quite I'm quite grateful of being able to deliver this program. We actually just had our first generation of students for this program graduate just a couple weeks ago. So certainly really excited, or actually just a couple days ago. So very, very recently.
Awesome. Yeah. And speaking of brand new, obviously Norquest breaking into the esports space as well, but in a very different way than MRU. Did you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on over there?
Yeah, sure. So at Norquest, we actually our journey sort of started in late 2019, and when we started looking at what we might do in the space, because we were very new to it and still are. So we developed an experimental business plan, which our executive then approved with some funding, and we'd also received some funding through an innovation prize as well. So we took those funds and we took a look at 3 different areas. So we looked at the commercial side of esports, and we've developed some partnerships there and through a series of online tournaments. Of course, like others, everything we're doing right now is online based because of COVID. And we also did some things on the community side because, of course, we're new. Our students didn't have a student club set up. There were, of course, pockets of students that were engaged in different gaming groups. So really, it was about building the foundation, making sure our students felt welcome, finding out the games that they were interested in playing and listening to their voices. And that took some experimentation and some trial and error to get, and still evolving. But probably what I think is most unique about what we're doing is perhaps in the academic learning space, but not so much with programs, but with some of the projects that we're doing with some of the other partners we have. So we had a Girls Who Game Equity Initiative, which was a project started originally by Dell Canada and Microsoft Education. And we partnered with them to put on an international speaker series of women in the esports industry, as well as in the STEM industry and leading spaces. And it was a wonderful series. We just concluded it this past week. And, I got to say, there's so much opportunity there in that space. And also our learners, we were able to hire students through support from these partners, hire Norquest esports gamers to work on this series as well, which I think was really exciting, just to see students get career opportunities, get exposure to others in those spaces, and just watch how excited they were as they learned through that project.
Yeah, and speaking of students that learn and get exposure and really want their hands on, I think that's kind of what we all imagine when we think of NATE. And the DMIT program is massive. It is not just game development. It is so many things, video production. It's a huge program. So, John, how did you kind of get involved in what does the game development stream look like?
Well, I got I had left BioWare and I was looking for something a little bit different. Went with that, talked to some people at NATE, and just mentioned that teaching might be something. My parents always said, "Oh, you'd be a good teacher." Well, okay, sure, I'll try it. I've been there for about 9 years, and yeah, we have two streams for the games stuff. So we have game design, which is the visual assets, and the game programming, so creating the code and the functionality. And so there are two separate streams. We do have a lot of other streams that have people that might move between a little bit. But primarily when we get to capstone, that's when we take the game designers and programmers, put them together. And for the last 3 years, we've also added business analyst students. And they will, so what we do in our capstone is we have clients that are looking for something. So we've worked with Glen Rose Rehabilitation Hospital, Edmonton Public Library, TELUS World of Science, even like the Canadian Navy and stuff like that. And they come in, they present what they need for, or what they have for requirements, and our students essentially have to come up with pitches to say this will solve your issues, and then they create a proof of concept. That's, you know, like we tell most of our clients that, you know, in 4 months you can't really make a full product necessarily. Sometimes you can. And yeah, I think we've been working with the Glen Rose for probably about almost 12 years now, and created a lot of products for them. And yeah, like was said before with the capstone, we're at a point where we just let them go, and they say, well, what are we supposed to do? And that's what you have to figure out. So the BAs have really added to adding Scrum and Agile development, and really help the students. So it's really kind of a cool thing to see them see how they approach using new technologies, say like the HoloLens or the Kinect on the Xbox, and having no experience with it, and see what they do with it.
Yeah, I can imagine. And Allison, you were saying, you know, things went from duct taping things to your head to teaching it. And is that is it part of a larger program where you teach?
It's not actually. So the VR AR program stands on its own. It's a certificate, and it is it's a mixed bag of things you take. So it's more of a generalist kind of approach. You take modeling, you'll take design, you take programming. There's even a little bit of business in there. And we kind of follow the same approach that you're probably, to anyone watching, going to hear the through line of it takes a team to make a game, right? People are going to come in with different bends, different things that they specialize in. Some people are more generalist, but we really focus on that integration and the doing. There's no better way to learn to do this stuff than to just do it. And so right from the get-go, you work together on projects. We have sort of an integrated studio model with our classes. So I teach mostly on the art side, on the modeling side. So in my class, you might be making the assets that you're going to then, you know, take to your programming class to put in the environment. And then in the audio class, you're going to do the audio for it. And in design, you'll design the experience. So you're kind of constantly doing that. And everyone has a little piece of the pie. And then as we get later on, people tend to specialize a bit more. You have a bigger capstone project too. But the cool thing is with VR, we work a lot with clients with VR and AR, unlike with games where you produce a game as a product. With VR and AR, often you're working with clients and you're doing, you know, made to suit type experiences. So we work with both internal and external clients to produce stuff for them. Often it ends up being games, especially with the capstone. I think more often than not, they are game-like experiences. But at the very end, of the year, it's actually technically 3 semesters. We have a short spring semester. You do what's called an industry integration. So you spend the whole 6 weeks working on a project for a client. And like I said, we try to treat it a little bit more like a studio as much as we can. So us 3 instructors in the program act sort of as leads for our department. So I'd act as the art lead. We have another guy who's design and audio, and we just sort of mentor things. So it's a bit of a melting pot. It's very scrappy, but our industry is scrappy. I'd say we're still duct taping things together. It just looks and feels a little better. But every 6 months, the ground changes underneath us. There's new hardware, new software. And because we use a lot of the processes and tools, I would say 99% of what we use is akin to the game industry. We move just as quickly, if not quicker. So the people in our program, I think they find it both terrifying and exciting that something you're doing at the start of the semester might be outdated by the end of the year, but it's kind of the nature, I guess, of being on the cutting edge of that field.
Yeah, very true. I mean, within the program that we've seen at U Alberta, I know we've had a few people who have just taken 250 who are also going to be speaking later on, but they have been through a few different iterations, working on Neverwinter Nights clones or now RPG Maker and different things like that. Is that kind of something that flows through the certificate program? Because I know NT 350 is a little bit different than the rest of them, right?
So the students take the certificate course at the same time, like many of you have suggested in your programs, while they're doing other things. So they have to do a BA or a BSc or BMUS or something like that at the same time that they do the certificate. And the tool sets change constantly, as Allison kindly, cleverly said. I mean, we started using the Aurora tool set with the students that the games were building for, the old Neverwinter Nights tool set. And we've gone through Unity, and we've tried Unreal, and we've tried all sorts of different ways of trying to provide the best mechanism for giving students the opportunity to create a complete game. And when you're trying to integrate a computing scientist's skills with a creative writing skills student with a music student, you have to make sure that the technology is about as transparent as possible, but also rich enough that the computing scientists can actually, show their chops at the same time. So we've tried a whole bunch of different ways, and we'll continue to try a whole bunch of different ways. I frequently make the joke about, the reviewing of our curriculum should be a constant process, right? It should never be set. We should always be doing that. One of the things, and I really like what's going on in this panel is that there are so many different ways to get into the industry and so many different successful ways to get into it. It's actually part of the research I do on the as part of my research agenda, which seems to give it a lot of authority, that word agenda, but it just sort of, we have been interviewing game developers for years. And what is the most common feature about all of the game developers as we sort of track the process of people going from school to work is they come from so many different places and they come from so many different areas. And so at U of A, what we try to do is focus on a different sort of a strategy, I guess, maybe than others, but our sort of philosophy is that to be a really great computing coder, you need to be, for games, you need to be a really good coder. To be a really good creative writer for games, you need to be a really good creative writer. So we really want people to have a major in a particular discipline and then have games across the top, sort of, so that you integrate them in interdisciplinary teams as they improve in their writing and as they improve in their coding and as they improve in their music, for example. So, to get to the gist of this, I think you really need a really clear and simple engine to allow these groups to work together, because they first need to learn how to talk to each other. And that's a challenge in and of itself.
For sure. I think communication is difficult enough when you're in person, let alone when you're trying to make games online. So it's been a particular challenge this year as well, I can imagine, for all these students, especially when they're scattered kind of throughout the province or throughout the world. When it comes to esports and the rise of that, though, we've seen it's just taking over. So when it comes to the crossover, like you were talking about, like somebody being a really good writer, do we see potentially there being some crossover of esports management, or how would that kind of look in the future? Do you imagine anything at the U of A kind of poking its head up there?
I would default to the esports experts in the panel to answer that question.
Yeah, well, I mean, oh, sorry. Well, I mean, like with esports, it's just it's like a subsection of the video game industry at large, and so certainly there are game developers behind the wheel for the games that we compete in within the esports context. So certainly, if there's any development studios that are developing like multiplayer games or with the intention of it being played competitively or in a competitive environment, then certainly there's significant crossover in that. And I mean, just to draw kind of a comparison at the AAA level, Riot Games now moving beyond just developing a MOBA with League of Legends and with Valorant as an RPS, but they're working on Project L, which is their entry into the fighting game space, which is certainly something that resonates with me, being particularly a fighting game enthusiast. But yeah, I mean, certainly a lot of crossover, and certainly those within our esports community, many of them have aspirations to pursue game development, to develop their own competitive games. But as to kind of echo everyone else on this panel with the last question, certainly like with this industry at large, it changes so quickly. And when we're looking at even the esports management program, which the curriculum was developed a number of years ago, is like quite outdated now. With the problem with games in particular and with esports is that the necessity for game developers to develop new exciting titles is fairly paramount. Unlike in traditional sports, you don't get significant changes. There's no hockey 2, or there's no like slam ball just now takes over basketball, right? And now a lot of these games, certainly some have been around for a long time, but others have very short lives, and then it's like the next big thing comes out and takes over for that particular genre. And so there's this constant need for new exciting titles to be developed, and so there's certainly a lot of synergies there, for sure.
Yeah, and with Derek at Norquest, we actually see a strategy focused around a team and the real sports side of things there. So is that something that we can look forward to potentially cheering on Norquest soon?
Yeah, so certainly, speaking to the crossover as well, we do see that within some of the foundational programs that we offer at the college. A lot of our foundational students are often coming in. Sometimes they're doing academic upgrading, or perhaps they're learning English, improving their English language proficiency skills, and they're also looking for where are those career opportunities that they can explore, and they might have other degrees or diplomas from other countries when they come to Canada, and how can they leverage those into other opportunities as well. And so we often are using esports as part of our experiment plan right now to engage in those groups. And it's been particularly challenging because for a lot of underrepresented groups with COVID-19, if they don't have access to the internet or the basics, we actually had to start there and provide laptops, in some cases hundreds of laptops, to underrepresented learners. And then, of course, we wanted to engage in social activities and have fun and learn about those career opportunities that they might want to pursue when they complete their foundational program pieces. So that's really where we've started with esports, is in that side of the space. But certainly we're looking at opportunities for recruitment with international students and other things as well, too, as part of the college work.
For sure. And when you talk about that as well, we've seen Nate, the Ooks also have their own team for some of the esports things that we've seen going on, which is fantastic to see. But also that barrier of entry for these marginalized communities or underrepresented gamers, we've seen places like Nate be able to take people in who maybe don't want to do that 4-year degree, like you were saying. But now, Nate, you can do degrees there, you can do certificates, you can do kind of whatever you make of it. Is that something that you kind of encourage people to take a look at?
Well, we're constantly trying to open things up to people, and it's a little bit difficult sometimes. Like I remember when they first hired me, and they were just waiting for somebody from BioWare to like decide to come and teach at Nate, and I was just like, okay, well, here I am. They had a couple people teach, just some intro courses and stuff. But yeah, it's hard when I'm kind of the one there that's creating some of these courses. I do have some help, with the other instructors, but they come from different backgrounds. So a lot of them are like, I'm a programmer, I'm not really a gamer. Okay, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, like when students come to open house and they're just like, well, what do I need to get into this, into DMIT? And like typically it's grade 11 English and math at 65%. So our requirements are pretty low, but it's kind of first come first serve right now. So it's hard to tell people that they have to apply it as soon as you can, because there's a lot of people that want to come in and experience this. But yeah, even now it's interesting with our discussions on how are we going to do the classrooms now, and just having to be online. A lot of us are saying, yeah, we would do it in teams or whatever. And I have full intention once I'm back in the classroom to set up a team. And, if somebody's sick and they can't be in class, well, just log in, right? So we've got that constantly, or somebody's in Calgary, then we have that potential to be able to have international students in the same classroom at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic to see. So we can see more people get involved for sure. And, just talking about that part of people trying something new as well. Allison, with U of L not being the same as Lethbridge College, I think people kind of, I'm going to speak from my Edmonton bubble here. They're like, well, what's the difference, right? But the Lethbridge College approach is really hands-on, like you were saying. But if folks wanted to kind of get involved in that, is it sort of the same that we've heard?
Yeah, so you're very right there. The college traditionally was like a trades and agriculture, I guess, is the main things we're known for. So very hands-on, very industry focused, very technical skills focused. And we've carried that into the VR AR program as well, because like I said, that's the way the industry is, right? You got to do it and get your hands dirty. It's like, I'm sure you guys ad nauseum are used to saying portfolio is everything, right? You have to show what you can do. So yeah, with the program itself, there's no entry requirements per se, like you have to have a high school diploma, but it is really fast paced because it's only a certificate. It's 1 year plus the spring semester, and we kind of go from 0 to 60 within the first week, and it doesn't stop until the end. And so we always tell people, like, dabble, if you want to get into this stuff, download Unity, it's free. Download Unreal, get Blender. A lot of this stuff has academic licenses now if you want Substance or whatever. Just get into it and get your feet wet. At worst, you find out it's not for you, and then, you've solved that problem. But at best, once you get into that school environment and it is going to be more intense, you've got a little bit of ground under you, and you might even kind of know where you want to go with it. So I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but yeah, we're so, I guess, hands-on with the program that if you're interested in it, start right away, get hands-on, and then you'll be ready come September.
For sure. And when we look at other programs, we actually have a volunteer who is working on the event who is a little grumpy. He was like, I didn't actually get into 250 because that course is actually so in demand at U of A. It's insane how popular it's become. And it's a little bit different, I would say, when you're applying for that one, because you do look at that background of music and art and trying to balance things out a little bit differently. But is that kind of the same encouragement to get involved that you want people to take into account?
Sorry, is that to me? Sorry. Exactly. I mean, it's really hard to balance. I mean, the entire intention of the certificate courses is to have the students work in interdisciplinary teams, not just because that mirrors the game design process, but because it is so important that they learn to be able to talk to each other across the disciplines in which they're in, so that when the computing scientist says, that's really difficult, And the artist says, I understand that, but this is really important. They can at least engage each other on a conversation, where the artist then does, after the computing scientist puts it in, the artist goes, you know what, actually, they need to be able to speak to each other so that they can have this sort of informed middle ground, is a term I like to use, where they can sort of talk to each other and not just at each other. And so, yeah, it's a challenge when it comes to stocking this course, because we need to make sure that there's an equal number of creative writers and musicians and artists, and we have people from business school who take it as well. So maybe there's the tie-in there with some of the comments that have been made earlier. And then, of course, there are the computing scientists. And I think it's really important to mention as well that we really want to make sure that the process in these courses is manageable. It is so easy for students to throw themselves into these courses and really sort of overwork themselves because they have a passion for games. And so one of the things we've been really trying to do over the last couple of years is to make sure that the tasks we're giving them are properly scoped, so they get a lot of project management experience with scoping, and to make sure that they are not, so that I said earlier that one of the things that we tried to do was mimic the game design process. What we're really in industry, what we're really focusing on right now is trying to make sure we don't mimic the worst parts of the game design process. And that includes things like crunch, obviously. So we've been trying to reimagine a lot of the courses and the certificate to take that into account. But yeah, it is a challenge. The course is hugely popular. So we had to put on multiple sections, and I'm sorry for the person who's helping you out. I'm afraid that person is not alone, unfortunately. We would love to put on more sessions, and this would be a plug for me to say support post-secondary education, so we can put on more courses that are clearly in demand, and our students graduate and get careers, and they want to stay in Edmonton or stay in Calgary or stay in Lethbridge and pay taxes here. And the only way they can do that is if they can show that they are capable of finding an environment where they can find work.
Very, very true. And I think, out of our Edmonton bubble, we definitely have that now, seeing 3 AAA studios here. We've got our mid-sized studios. We've got tons of different places to work at, and there's a lot going on. So it is definitely something that we're always addressing. I see Victor get very excited because when we talk about things like crunch or treating people fairly for the work that they do, I know he's very passionate about that in the esports scene as well, because it has been something where we have seen people who just get too excited and they just want to put their whole heart and soul into it. Like even some of our AESA volunteers who are like, I'll stay up until midnight. But that's not something we necessarily want to encourage, right, Victor?
Yeah, definitely. And I just wanted to chime in because to balance things out, there's certainly a volunteer that wanted to get into that program and didn't. But we also have someone from our internal team that did get into it, and they're working on it right now. So shout outs to Alex Schaefer, who's one of our executives, and he is going through the program. So it'll be funny because he's participating in the award ceremony too, while also putting on this event. So might be a little bit of might be a little bit of conflict of interest if he ends up winning one of the awards while also putting together this event on the back end. But yeah, I mean, certainly to echo, and I think most of us on this panel will agree, with video games and with esports in general being such an exciting space, and so many of us have this deep, emotional attachment to gaming. And so you do get a lot of eccentric, enthusiastic folks looking to get into this industry and putting a lot more time. And oftentimes what happens is they get exploited. And we certainly see that quite a lot in esports with both players and professional players, as well as with industry talent. And so certainly one thing that we're looking to do, and this is beyond just Mount Royal, but certainly with the role of the Alberta Esports Association, really what we're doing here with Edmonton Direct is to bring visibility to the industry talent within the sector and to really encourage change within the system. And it's great to hear with yourself, Sean, to address the crunch culture that's so prominent within game development. And certainly we're trying to do the same within esports, and to ensure that the labor within that sector doesn't get exploited due to all the excitement and energy within this space. So it's something that I certainly resonate with quite a lot.
Well, then I definitely see John nodding when we talk about crunch. He's like, yes, please, no more crunch. Let's not do that anymore. Well, it may have been fun in the original maybe for Baldur's Gate, but not anymore. That's for sure. But no, it's amazing to see that there are so many ways for people to get involved, not just from STEM backgrounds, but also to give people kind of that taste of STEM if they're interested. And I think that was the really, really interesting part. Like with Girls Who Game Equity, they got to see tons of different people. There were people who put on live events, people who work on the actual like programming that goes into it, as well as some of those the courses that are part of it. So I think that was a really interesting thing to come out of Norquest. Is that kind of something we're going to keep seeing, or?
Absolutely, yeah. So we are looking at expanding what we might do. Certainly when we get out of COVID, we'd like to do some events and things in support of Girls Who Game Equity, because there's certainly lots of K-12s in this space as well. But we also want to look at some of the Indigenous STEM spaces as well. So our Indigenous Center has asked us what we might do to go out into Indigenous communities and to not just talk about STEM and some of the other exciting programs we're doing, but to engage them in STEM opportunities through esports, and to help them understand the strong connection that exists, between the skill sets that you need when you play a game and the skill sets that you need in other aspects and other careers. So, and how you can take that passion and turn it into a career opportunity. So really excited about expanding the current project that we're doing and bringing some additional partners in and moving forward with that.
Definitely. And I just kind of wanted to touch on one thing as well. Is there's so much community that goes into this. Like you are all talking about that you do projects within the community as well, like whether through your own research or through the programs that you're actually working on. John, can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like with like the Glenrose?
Well, with the Glenrose, it's really interesting because a lot of students would come in early on and they're like, "Oh, I want to get a job at BioWare." I'm like, "Okay, well, and they would say, "Okay, your sights are a little high, but we'll see what happens." But what happens with the Glenrose is it's great with them because most of our projects that we do for them are usable right away. Because their scope is so small. So they're looking at games that, like somebody that has difficulty opening and closing their hand, right? They want to rehabilitate this, but they want to do it in a way that's not just boring to do this 100 times a day. So they'll create games that require you to, use a touch screen, or we've recently done some cognitive games. And it's a way to kind of gamify your therapy, and they've found that it's just really fascinating to see how students will take an idea and create something. So they love to hear the pitches of what the students come up with. They always have like, this is what we kind of think would be neat, but let's see what you guys come up with. And they always go with the student pitches over what they've thought of. And lastly, like it's the only issue that we have is a lot of our students want to make the games challenging, and it's like, no, these games have to be, like somebody that can't do this very easily. It's like the game should be boring for you guys, but have those difficulty sliders and everything like that. And so they do learn. Once in a while, I've threatened to, strap a bunch of elastics to their hands to show them, just how difficult it is for these patients. But they do a good job.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Allison, is it kind of similar with what your students work on?
Yeah. So they do a lot of solving problems, I guess. VR and AR is it's a tool. It's a new tool. And to give an example, I guess, of one of the projects we're just finishing up, we're working with the town of Grand Cache. So way up north, I guess you guys in Edmonton are probably more familiar with it than I am, but they have a coal mine there. And as they're digging, very often they shear off the cliff face and they find dinosaur footprints. And it's a wealth of tourism opportunity, but the problem is it's in a mine. It's hours away from any major city. It's like 45 minutes from the town itself, and you have to get special permissions just to get up there. And so what we did is we used a technique called photogrammetry. So using a bunch of photos of a surface, you can replicate it in 3D. And we scanned this whole huge cliff face that has like 1,100 dinosaur footprints on it, or just something just incredible. And we recreated the environments in VR, and we actually worked with a couple of the graduates from last year's class to build this. And now they're going to have it in the next couple months here in the Tourism Center in Grand Cache, so people can experience that virtually, and it's sort of gamified. You go in as a paleontologist and you can cast the print and stuff like that. And so it's just really cool to see this technology sort of exist beyond just Beat Saber, right? You can very much make a Beat Saber with the same skill set, but you can also do stuff like that with the same, I guess, strokes. It's a lot of fun. I guess on a tangent, when I was talking about sort of just getting involved with the industry, one of the things that helped me get into it that I've been doing for years now is game jams. Get in with game jams. I've been hosting it for 6 years down in Lethbridge now. Every year we get our class involved, and every year they're nervous going in, but on the way out, they're like, that was the best thing ever. I learned so much. I had one student say they learned more in game jam than they did all semester, which I'm not quite sure how to take that. But you do learn a lot from a game jam, so please participate in those. And it's a great way to get involved in the community. Most of the people I know in this industry now I've met at a game jam.
Yeah, I think that's great advice of just being able to check things out a little bit. When it comes to online, I know we've kind of been talking a little bit about COVID because obviously it's impacted everything everyone does. U of A actually tried something new this year of making online games because some of your students are actually international students currently not in the country. How has that kind of impacted the course?
It's an incredible challenge. I was lucky enough or punished enough, I'm not sure which, to be one of the people helping with the Faculty of Arts' sort of approach to how to deal with online classes. And the general philosophy that we came up with was that you have to put yourself into the position of the most marginalized member of society when trying to figure out how to structure your class, because you're creating so many barriers by having everything online. And yes, a lot of things can be done asynchronously, but as soon as you ask a student who is in Hong Kong, for example, to meet with students synchronously in Edmonton, you have put a burden on that student that is just unfair. And it's so we really struggled with the idea of how do we go about collaboratively building games. And it's a real, I don't think we've solved the problem by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it really focuses on the importance of asynchronous delivery to try and figure out a way to try and give students an opportunity to succeed in an environment where everything is against them. So yeah, we certainly didn't solve the problem. There are lots of different mechanisms for working collaboratively, and even in playtesting through Tabletop Simulator and the like, all sorts of different ways in which we can test games that are being built. And as had been mentioned by many people here, the barriers to entry are so low in some ways because the technology is available for free for students in many ways, although, not obviously it assumes they have a computer, which is another barrier in and of itself. Now, I'd be interested to hear how other institutions have dealt with this problem. I do just want to say that before we get to that, Allison, that footprint thing sounds amazing, and I totally want to go see that. So
that's exactly what I was thinking.
So well done.
I'll be splattering that all over Twitter when I can. So
yeah, we're all gonna have to take a look at Grand Cache for sure. But yeah, John, did you also find with game development that asynchronicity kind of, it can work, but sometimes it can't work? Maybe your past at BioWare maybe can help out that a little bit with having worked at a studio that worked with other studios?
Well, it's definitely a challenge that we tried at. I had one student that was in China. We were teaching one course, and A lot of things happened with his family, and it really you find that the students don't communicate as much sometimes, and so you really have to do a lot more of like, hey, how's it going? And it was really stressful at first because I had to do all of the, hey, are you okay? And if things aren't going well, they felt embarrassed that they weren't able to keep going. And so yeah, it's just something we have to learn from this. Try a bunch of things, see what works, and try to be cognizant of like the difficulties that students are having.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the best way to just remember that we're all in this together. As cheesy as it sounds, a year and a bit into the pandemic, I think it's pretty obvious from here and from seeing all these different sides of post-secondary. You've all been working your tails off to make this a great experience for students. So I think we really appreciate that. What I need to know though is if somebody's interested in your program, where do they start? How do they get involved? So I'll start with Victor.
Sure, yeah. So if you're interested in taking the esports management program, it's a very flexible program. It's just one course a week over the course of 6 weeks for 4 courses total. And you can just check out mru.ca/esports, and it'll take you right to our page. You'll see a little biography of all the instructors that are teaching the program and all the requirements that are necessary. And yeah, it's fairly easy to sign up, and looking forward to meeting some of the new students.
For sure. And how about yourself, Derek?
Yeah, so before I talk about Norquest, I want to give a shout out to Vic's program at Mount Royal. One of our esports working team members was enrolled in that program and absolutely loved it. So kudos to you for creating a new program in the middle of a pandemic too, on top of everything. So yeah, so for Norquest, in terms generally of some of our foundational or business environment technology or healthcare programs, you could look on our website, norquest.ca, and that's the top of the page. You'll see certainly lots of opportunity to access and learn more about those programs. Specifically to Norquest Esports, our Twitch or Twitter account, Norquest Esports is where you can get information on our community events. Again, we're an inclusive community of gaming enthusiasts, so our community is not specific to Norquesters, staff, or students or alumni. We often have folks dropping in and out from other post-secondaries or from just the community at large. So feel free to come in, check it out, and join us in some game nights.
For sure. I mean, we've got 5 of you here, so we've got a League of Legends team in the making. But how about you, Allison? How can people get involved in your program?
Sure. So same thing, you can check out our website. So lethbridgecollege.ca. There's little programs drop down. You'll find us in there. You can also follow me on Twitter, super creative at Allison Secor. I tend to talk about it a lot, so you get some info there, but I'm always happy to chat with people if they have questions one-on-one. You can just DM me there, or our emails and profiles will be on the Lethbridge College website. We are also going to offer both an online and in-person version. So if you're not too keen on moving down to Lethbridge, or if you prefer the in-person type thing, you have options.
Great to know. And how about over at Nate, John?
So you can definitely check out our nate.ca website and send any questions to dmit@nate.ca.
Fantastic. And last but not least, the U Alberta. How do people get involved over there?
Because it's a certificate and certificate works differently than it sounds like it works elsewhere, you have to be a student at U of A to take a certificate. And we take anyone, though. If you are a medical student, a business student, an art student, a science student, and you can fit it into your calendar, you are welcome to take the courses, and you just look for Compute 250, as been said, which is cleverly named Computers and Games, which is also the name of the capstone course. You can sign up for the certificate and take our courses.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you all for being here today. I think this is so fascinating to see all these different sides of post-secondary and how people can get involved. But I really want to thank you for taking some time so we can show what we have going on, not only here in Edmonton, but all across the province.